You're listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry podcast with Jody Livingston. Oh, and Chris Trent's back. And this is episode number 50. Never trust a magician with your coin collection.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now your host, Jody Livingston.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in and listening wherever you are and wherever this finds you. Thanks for making this podcast today a part of your day. If it's your first time checking out the show, welcome. You picked a fantastic episode to start on, as there are some changes coming to the Longer Haul. We'll talk about all of that today. And if you're coming back, well, welcome on back. You can, as always, find me on the Twitter sphere at Jody Livingston, and of course on the Facebook over at The Longer Haul. All of the links and resources mentioned in today's episode you can find on the show notes page at thelongerhaul.com/episode 050. That's thelongerhaul.com/episode 050. So, a little bit of announcements to make today. We're going to talk a little bit again on longevity, which seems only fitting since this is, after all, the Longer Haul Youth Ministry podcast. And even we're going to have a little bit of a live magician on the show today. And so this episode will be different than others, sort of. Only in the sense that we're kind of going to give you a little bit of an idea of what's to come and what's changing, but a great episode, some really, really good stuff in here. And of course, again, we will throw out some resources at the end for you, so make sure you stick around for that. So, hey, with all that said and out of the way, let's get into today's episode.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Well, hey, Chris, welcome back again to the show. Different capacity, for sure, this time. And I'm excited. I'm really excited about today. I think if you're listening and you have been listening to the podcast for a while and you listened back in episode 36, you will be familiar with Chris. And I believe we figured out when we were looking at this that it has the record of being the longest episode.
So my question is, what have you gotten yourself into? What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's an exciting episode here for the Longer Haul and for the podcast. Chris Trent here is coming on as partner to the Longer Haul, and I'm excited to have him here and coming on. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, kind of how that came about, as well as just kind of revisit longevity a bit. That is kind of the thrust of what the Longer Haul does and what it's for, and so we'll talk a little about that towards that, and then we'll throw out some resources at the end.
Yeah, man.
That we'll come up with.
I'm super pumped to be a part of it. The Longer Haul. I enjoyed episode 36 a ton, and of course, you and I, we're not exactly. We're in North Atlanta together. We don't run in the same area very often, so we don't see each other a ton. But we've seen each other here and there, coming and going, and so been friends in ministry for a while together, of course. And then the podcast, man, I loved that podcast that time, and we both have served at our churches for a pretty good while now. So the idea of partnering sounds fun to me. It's
Indeed.
awesome, man. It's great.
Yeah, and so this will kind of be from here forward, at least, as far as we know.
Until you break up with me.
Until we break up. or until the audience rebels and says, get rid of Jody. Just give it
won't
to
be that.
Just give it to Chris.
Why did you bring that guy on?
The show will be a little different, although largely the same as you have. The biggest change, obviously, is that there's now not just me, but Chris will be here as well. So huge advantage for that, as far as I'm concerned. because you're way smarter than me.
That's not true.
You have more hair than me.
That's definitely true, actually.
And yeah, there'll be some added perspective brought in, which I think is really helpful and needed. And we came out, as Chris said, we've kind of known each other for a while now. Here we actually met through our local network here,
yes,
with the association, and so
you've done such a fabulous job keeping up.
Yeah, well. That's why we started the show, because we're trying to encourage longevity, and but the reality is that even here in our local network, man, a lot of youth pastors have left and coming on, and so we've actually talked about that. What does that look like to get that going again?
Yeah, I think the thing that the thing that brings us together. Number one, we're both just committed to longevity. So I'm 47.
Gosh, you are so old.
Thanks. 47-year-old middle school pastor. Actually, I do middle school ministry now. I'm at Johnson Ferry Baptist Church over in Marietta. Been here for 13 and a half years and love.
You were old when
ministry.
You came here.
I know. That's what's nuts. I was already an elder, I felt like, in youth ministry world, but now I've been here for a pretty good while and still digging it. And love investing in other youth pastors. Love to be around guys that are committed to doing this thing long term. And our passions are the same there, which is awesome. So I know all what the longer haul has been all about has been about encouraging guys to be able to stay for the longer haul. And so for me, still every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night, I'm doing what every other youth pastor is doing. Man, I'm hanging out with kids, and I'm hanging out with middle school students actually for me, but. Just loving it. So the idea that we could maybe come together and continue what you've already started and continue to interview some guys and gals and talk about how it could help maybe all of us, because I listen to this stuff as well. I listen to other I don't listen to yours, but no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well,
I'm kidding. I totally listen to
at least the one episode.
Yeah, and so, but no, I mean, I listen to podcasts. I read youth ministry blogs and try to get all these tools, as well. So. The idea that we could continue to maybe help out some other folks, that's a win for me, man. That's good.
We're all learning and growing.
Yeah.
If you don't know this about Chris, he is a pretty good magician.
Oh, that's what you came out with first?
Yeah. So we've
been a pretty good dad, been a great husband.
Well, one element we've tossed around adding to the show is that you would do a magic trick every episode.
Yeah. And I keep reminding you that they're not watching.
So we're trying to figure that out still, but we're just trying to spice it up. Do something nobody else is doing.
Yeah.
No other youth ministry blogs doing magic tricks every episode.
I would like to bring some of these illusion guys. We should get an illusion. It's like when he's traveling, these Christian illusionist type guys. We should have them on as an episode, as an episode one time. That'd be fun.
That would be fun. But then we could watch the magic tricks and everybody else.
That was amazing. You should have seen that.
Well, you just blew my mind with that. You would never believe what that was. We'll have to do that one. We'll have to video that one.
Yes.
And replay that. That'd be fun. So do you have a trick?
No, I got no.
Oh, okay.
We're literally on, they're listening.
I know. I was just asking. I thought maybe you'd have one. So, good stuff here. You'll be hearing, obviously, Chris will be bringing a lot in. I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited for him to come in. This is kind of a conversation that has really happened sort of over a long period of time, but more so recently, kind of gained some steam in the last couple months, and just thinking about how we could come together and do more. Yeah. You've obviously got the book, which we talked about in 36, which is great.
Yeah.
And you're kind of encouraging and doing this, and then we're doing here. And so how can we do this more effectively and together?
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think one thing we could start with, Jody, would be just for you to kind of tell everybody why for you. I mean, so, because I was a little bit surprised to get, the phone call, the conversation of, you partnering, not just bringing on the coast, but you and I doing this together. What brought you to the point where you were ready to, because you already, man, Long Haul's doing great. Why did you decide to do this?
Well, I'm not real sure. No, I'm kidding. No, I think
you were 48 episodes in.
Yeah, so
They're going pretty good.
We've been doing this a while, and I feel like I've said a lot along the way. But I know there's a lot more to be said. And I think for me to be able to, like, looking ahead at where we've come in this and where still there is to go, I think it's one of those things where I just realized, I think if I'm going to do this and continue to do it well, I'm going to need... I can't continue to do it alone. Maybe I could continue, but not at the level that I would want to.
Sure.
And so bringing somebody in who had a very similar philosophy of ministry, very similar passion for longevity. I mean, I think we were talking about this earlier today, even like when I started the podcast and the blog, no one was talking about longevity, which is part of the reason why I decided to start it, because I felt like it was a really needed conversation that no one was having. And it seems like as of lately, you're hearing more and more people talk about longevity.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's always really good advice or that they're defining longevity the same. Right. And so I'm really trying to help and encourage you stay where you are for a really long period of time, not just stay in youth ministry for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I think most people think of longevity as just being a youth pastor for a really long time. And certainly I guess that's an element of it. But for me, I think it's healthier for you and for the church, and certainly for the students, for you just to stay put. And it's not as easy as it sounds, I mean, at all, or everybody would be doing it. But to find somebody who had kind of that similar passion, similar philosophy of ministry, who had also at the same time stayed put and seen the benefit of that, was really important. And it just seemed very natural, kind of as we've kind of developed a friendship and kind of seen what ministry looks like at either place, that it just seemed like a pretty natural fit. And thinking too, like, how do we strengthen what we have here? How can we better serve the listeners? How do we better serve those on the mailing list? How do we better serve those who read the blog? How can we better serve and equip them for the longer haul?
Sure.
And to me, the best way to do that was to bring somebody else in to help. And to be honest, it wasn't a thing where I thought, well, let me go find somebody and bring them in. It just, it really came down to knowing you, knowing your heart, knowing what you're doing, knowing what you have done, and just feeling like, hey, this could be a good thing.
Sure.
We could
well,
probably
that's why I listened to him. What's been interesting is, this wasn't like an overnight decision for us.
Oh, no.
One of us, like, we've been a month and a half, 2 months building up to this process where we started, doing this first time. Even went as far as to go out to eat with our wives.
Yeah.
Because I had been given some advice, about doing a partnership that if you're going to do that, number one, make sure you can live life together, So we've been trying to investigate that, a little bit, I think, just by hanging out a little more, talking a little more on the phone and spending time and all that's been. And ultimately, I think we keep coming back to our heartbeats are very similar, and we don't agree on necessarily everything, which is probably nobody's going to. It's
That'll be good,
right? But at the end of the day, both of our hearts beat for youth pastors and what we're all doing when it comes to pouring into the lives of teenagers. And both of our hearts beat when it comes to this idea of longevity. And I agree with you, longevity at a particular church for a good long time, but also longevity in terms of how long you actually do youth ministry.
Yeah.
In life, so here I'm as a 47-year-old. I don't see the end coming anytime soon. Others may have different philosophy of that. But currently, I feel like I can keep doing this for a pretty good while. I know a lot of guys that are in their 60s still doing this.
Yeah.
One of the most effective guys I know is down in Orlando. And he's still just killing it. He's 62, 63 years old. So yeah, it's been an interesting process. But it was neat to see how kind of God seems to be in a lot of this as far as connecting.
Sure.
Even our wives just kind of hit it off really well together, and which was really cool to see that. And of course, we were eating Mexican food, so you can totally I get along with anybody.
Well, and they had that ranch jalapeno dip.
Yeah, Chewy's. Can you say that? Yeah,
Well, we
on the
just did.
podcast. Yeah,
They're not a sponsor. I wish they would.
this
That'd be
stuff
fantastic.
is so.
If they could sponsor and just give us chips and that jalapeno ranch stuff.
Just but the crunching on the mic might be bad.
Yeah.
But it'd be so good.
Well, I think they put crack in that stuff, and so
Yeah.
that helps.
Can you
any
say that? I don't
conversation.
think you say that. Yeah, just did.
Just did.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's, I mean, really for all intents and purposes, it's been rather smooth.
Yeah.
I mean, we're working through stuff, and there's still
Yeah.
things we're trying to wrestle through, and we will
Sure.
for a long time. And I think that's the other thing too that's probably really exciting is,
And we welcome feedback related to that. As
Absolutely.
we're starting this thing out right now, I mean,
things
we'd love
will
to hear.
change.
We'd love to hear from what's some things you'd love for us to tackle, or who's some folks you'd love for us to jump in. Try to get on the show just to talk about some things. And now that we're coming at this from a new angle, different angle, and I think that part's going to be pretty exciting. So I'm really looking forward to it, man. And I know for me, I spend quite a bit of time, in different churches or different conferences, just speaking at these things, and I've spent some time talking with, different youth pastors, and both guys and girls alike. And at the end of the day, man, our love for teenagers is what brings us all together. But I also know that a lot of guys are really struggling. I mean, and I've struggled, right? And you've
Sure.
struggled. We both have struggled.
Yeah.
Truth be known, you're struggling right now, and
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
making a joke there. I mean, there's some stuff I've been chatting about, and that's part of what's going to be. Hopefully, God will use some of this to encourage, and hopefully we'll be encouraged. This is as much for me as it is.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, that's sort of the secret of this thing for me is like to just have that opportunity to continue to learn and grow, and that's going to be good.
Yeah. So, Chris will constantly downplay his role here, but don't believe that. It'll be, he's a powerhouse, man, wealth of knowledge. So let's do this then. Since it's our first one back, let's talk a little about longevity. And I know we did that in episode 36, but
Yes.
it was more centered around specific topics that you tackled in the book, which is still fantastic. It was then and it still is now.
Consider this a youth pastor's guide to longevity.
There you go.
Yeah, it sounds very fancy, doesn't it?
We'll put a link for that in the show notes because legitimately, you need to read that book. And I'm not just saying that because Chris is sitting here. One of the most practical and helpful books that I think I've ever read on youth ministry. And I mean, so many things in there that you just need to know. And so I would say, especially if you're starting out in youth ministry, there's some things that the book is so helpful in that kind of gives you some warnings from down the road, that you're going to face down the road. But regardless of where you are, like just good reminders, practical things that are helpful there. But I don't want to rehash the same episode
Yeah, of course.
necessarily because that would be redundant. You could just go listen to that.
Yes.
But I do want to talk about
Or you could buy the
longevity.
book and read the book.
Or you could buy the book and read the book. And then
We should can we give away a copy? Let's give away a copy.
Well, that's your call. It's your book. I
I've
can't give away your
got a
book.
closet full of them.
I can't give away your book.
It's like,
There you go.
no,
How do you want to give it away?
I don't know. I think if you were to post, I don't know anything about this podcasting business, man. So, like, what do you do? You say you post a comment somewhere, or what do you do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll think about it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
We'll come back at the end. We'll tell you at the end how you can win the book.
The comment needs to have something to do with. I'm so glad you finally got somebody else on there, Jody. It needs to be something like that, or I can already tell I like Chris a whole lot more.
Yeah. Chris is way better.
Yeah.
That's right. His hair is so much cooler.
No, I'd love to give away a copy or two, even. Man, I got a couple extra copies.
Yeah, so we'll think about that as we go. I'll think about that as we talk, and we'll figure out how we'll do that the best way. Let me ask you this: how would you define longevity? I mean, I know we've kind of tossed around here at the beginning a few minutes, but like, I feel like everybody talks about because let me frame this because we've had this conversation.
Yes.
I hear people say all the time, I'm going to be in youth ministry for life.
Yes.
This is it. It's forever.
Sure.
And I know we both have really strong opinion about that for another for another episode, another day.
Yes.
Okay. And I appreciate the heart behind that.
Okay.
For sure. And I talk to people a lot who have been in youth ministry for a really long time, but I don't know if that necessarily equates to longevity as a whole. So when you think longevity, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. It really does, the oversimplification of that is that, you're talking about two different things. And I was blessed to have, some mentors early on, when I was an intern at First Baptist North Mobile in Mobile, Alabama. Great years, man. I was an intern, there for 3 years while I was going to school, and was blessed to have a guy there that said, early on, he said things to me like, you're going to hear people tell you that the first 2 years are your honeymoon stage, but I'm here to tell you that after 2 years, that's when it really starts to get sweet, and I think he's right. And I've experienced that. And I've been blessed to be now, in 2 churches, in all these years, I've only been a part of 2 churches, and which is actually a huge blessing. And I know not everybody listening has had that same blessing, and not all churches are worth staying at, for a long term, truth be known. But that said, for me and Wendy both, honestly, one of our goals early on was just to stay put, to try to find a place we could stay put. But as a result of that, though, I will tell you that maybe this was wisdom early on, but if it was because somebody taught it to me, which was not just to settle and take just any job anywhere.
Right.
Matter of fact, when we went out to Fort Worth to go to seminary, we purposely did not take a gig right off the bat because we did not want to live in Texas forever. We ended up staying there for 11 years.
And that's Texas forever, and that's
yeah.
I think I saw that on Friday.
People say that I wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as I could. Yeah, they do. They say that.
I believe it.
And I kind of lived that for a little while, to be honest with you. Honestly, when we first got out there, I worked at a church, but I did more like a support staff kind of role. I did some graphic design type stuff for a while, and I worked for what used to be called the Baptist Bookstore down Lifeway, which was cool. But that said, we purposely did not take one of what's called like a seminary, and I'm not knocking anybody who did this because there's, kids need people, no doubt. But we did not want to take a church and stay there for like 2 years because we knew we wanted to come back to the South eventually. Now God had different plans, but even in that, though, when we said yes to our church over in Garland, we knew that we were committing. Like our minimum goal was to see a 7th grade class graduate.
Yeah, sure.
Like that was for us, that was like a stated, we want to stay here and be here through at least that. And thankfully we were able to see that plus a couple extra classes. We were able to see a group all the way through and ended up being, several groups through. But that's definitely one type of longevity, but I tell you, you got to be intentional about it. That's the one thing I know. That's what I think about, that there's too many roadblocks along the way.
Right.
And these, and there are people that are listening. Some of you are living them like right now. So there has to be some intentionality there, I think with the book, when I read the book, the one thing I regret, and if I ever do a rewrite of the book, I probably will split that up and do like a longevity at your church, your current church, and then longevity long term. Because that's the other side of that longevity coin,
right.
And is that we're talking about, can I do youth ministry into my 40s? Which in dog years is like 85.
Right. Or middle school years.
In middle school years, yeah. And, but even that, I think there has to be some intentionality in order to accomplish that. It's just not going to happen automatically.
Right.
And
well, because how you do middle school into your 40s or youth ministry, doesn't have to be middle school.
Sure, yeah.
Does not look the same like when you're in your 20s.
No, not at all.
So, and I think that's where a lot of youth pastors struggle is they don't know, they how do I say what I'm trying to say? They don't transition out of the way they're doing ministry in their 20s to see how that looks like in their 40s.
Sure.
So what do you think are some differences that when you think back to now versus then?
Your kids.
Yeah.
Marriage, kids. That's an obvious, and that's not true for every single person, obviously, but kids change, just everything related to that. And because all of a sudden your time changes. And so I think you have to relearn, how to do ministry, you know, and I think if you're not good at working with volunteers, you're really going to struggle when those days come.
Right.
Those are going to be really hard days.
And that's one of the reasons why, to this point, like I've really, really stressed building a team.
Yeah, sure.
Building a team of volunteers, I mean, that's really been probably outside of just every other topic we're talking about through the podcast as those come through. But like, all the courses to this point, all the emphasis to this point has really been primarily on here's how to build a team of volunteers.
Yeah. Well, and listen, you need to build volunteers because one day you're going to be gone.
Right.
And they're the ones that are going to stay.
Yeah. One way or another.
Yeah.
You're going to leave.
Yeah.
So, okay. What then do you see? And just to be clear, I'm making this up as we go. Like I didn't give you questions ahead of time. I mean,
No.
So yeah. I just want people to know this isn't like some pre-written thing.
No.
I'm totally putting you on the spot. So we're talking about longevity and staying for a long time. What are some reasons, viable reasons, that a youth pastor should consider leaving?
Yeah. Okay. Well, church answer first. Jesus Juke answer, right? Okay.
Yeah.
It would be obviously the God's calling, right?
Which I hear so much.
Yeah.
Right around the 2.5 year mark.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Yeah.
No, I mean, like every youth pastor that I talk to that tells me they're thinking about leaving, almost every one of them, when I ask them how long they've been there, it's somewhere give or take 3 years.
Yeah.
Which is amazing that God does that so consistently.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
I'm probably guilty of, when it comes to God's calling on my life, trying to figure that out at times, like everybody tries to figure that out. I'm probably a little bit guilty. Tell me if this is you. I don't know if this is you or not. I think if I really, really, really want to, then maybe it's just not God's call.
Yeah, right.
Which is probably, that's not true because God does give us the desires of our heart. So I think there's part of that, in there. I think though, here's the deal. I think it has to be more than it's hard.
Yeah.
I don't think that it being hard is God's calling. That's not a sign of God's calling. I think doors start to shut and stay shut and remain shut, and you cannot get them open. I think other opportunities presenting themselves that seem to, just resonate. I think ultimately, this is hard advice to give because in every situation I would want to literally have a conversation and really impact so much with somebody before they heeded this advice. But the truth is there are some churches that are so unhealthy that it's not healthy for you to stay there anymore.
Sure, I agree.
Or maybe it's a relationship with a pastor or another staff person or whatever that might be. And I think the key to that though is that it doesn't have to change overnight.
Right.
That we have to allow for God's timing. And we have to also make sure that we're hearing from God on that when it comes to saying, I'm releasing you.
Yeah.
Because what we do know from Scripture is that there are moments where things are hard. Like, things are hard. Ministry's hard.
Yeah, I just read an article a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember where it was at. So I will find it, and we'll put the link in the show notes. But it was on weariness.
Yeah.
And the gist of the article was that there's a difference between burnout and weary. And I think often we confuse them.
Yes.
And the article basically says, look, if Jesus grew weary, we should too.
Yeah.
Like, weariness is okay.
Yeah.
And probably expected as a pastor.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think a dentist that owns a dentist practice that all he does is fill teeth and fix teeth all the time, don't you think he probably every once in a while gets weary?
I don't know why anybody would want to be a dentist and use that drill on people's teeth, man. I think
but you
do
understand
that
what I'm
because
saying?
you're sadistic.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
There's a part of you that says...
my last filling, I went without Novocaine.
That's why you're so much cooler to me.
That's a true story.
Why?
Because
you're like, I work with middle schoolers every day. I can handle
the pain. Because I decided I'd rather have 5 seconds of pain, of drilling pain, than the shot. I hated the idea of the shot. I was like, dude, just drill it. If it's only going to take that. You drilled it and it hurt for a second.
Oh, man. What's
wrong?
It's
a true story. There are people cringing right now going,
I'm cringing right now.
When I was done, I was done, bro.
Gosh,
like I was
no.
Done. Yeah. Yep.
So we'll... God. Gosh, no way, man.
Yeah.
Give me the.
So, but here's, go back to the point, which
I don't even remember what the point was.
It's
okay to be weary.
But it name any profession.
Oh, yeah,
I
sure.
suspect every profession, people get to accountants,
Oh, yeah, sure.
lawyers,
Yeah, we get weary.
whatever, man.
And it's okay. And I think
Whatever
sometimes
job
we
you can
confuse
think
that.
of.
Right?
Yes.
Sometimes we think weary means I need to get out of here.
Yes.
And I think the posture of our hearts in this is, yes, there are churches that are unhealthy to be in at times. There are situations that are unhealthy. But it should never be your first instinct to leave.
Because what we believe, you and I both believe passionately, is that we think that on the other side of that process that you're going through, or that pain, or that difficult time, that it's going to be much better.
Right.
And that, 2 years, like my mentor told me, 2 years in, man, that's awesome. Well, let me tell you, 5 years, because I've had 5 years.
Is good.
5 years, ridiculous.
5 is
right?
good.
Listen, I've had 10 now. 10 years, awesome.
Yeah.
Like I've had a 10-year moment now, and I'm getting close to 15, like here at Johnson Ferry. And so I'll be able to have experienced, that 15-year mark. But I can tell you straight up, having been here for 13 years, man, I mean, there's such. Yeah. And the other part I would say about that is, don't underestimate being a youth pastor that has kids and raised kids. And maybe that's not in the cards for every single person listening. I understand that. But even life experience, the longer you do that, the more people trust you.
Absolutely.
The more influence you're going to be able to have over parents. They're going to take your word for stuff a whole lot more. Whereas if you're the new person, man, walking in, rightfully so, man, they're a little bit like, I don't know. Let me get to know you before I
entrust you
with what I should be doing with my kid.
Right. Yeah. The watershed moment when I turned 30. I had kids at that point for years.
Sure.
But I turned 30 and everybody was like, oh, he's a real boy. He's a real adult now. We can trust him. So I think we would all say, in fact, if you go to thelongerhaul.com, I forgot I had this on there. If you go to thelongerhaul.com, on the left-hand side of the page, you can download 7 reasons you should leave your church.
Yeah.
I've got 7 on there. It's free.
Yeah.
Just doesn't cost you anything. And so if you're in a situation where you're really struggling trying to figure out whether you should stay or whether you should go, or what are the reasons to leave, that's a good starting place for you.
Sure.
Every situation is going to be unique. I think you said that.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult, I know, to say, oh, well, here are reasons you should leave. But, I would think, like, if your family is really unhealthy and struggling,
yeah,
your marriage is like, maybe you need to step away.
Yes.
That's for sure. If there's moral failure on your part, you've got to step away. I think.
But there's something. Here's the tricky part, though, to this whole conversation, Jody. Here's what I would say: that there are a whole lot of things we think are reasons, that are going to stay true no matter where we serve.
Right.
There are always going to be difficult people in every church you serve in,
and they'll always have a different name.
Yes,
it's the same person at every church.
It is, but the fact is, you and I both know, and it doesn't matter what size church you're in. It doesn't matter where you're at. And there is probably a little bit of a honeymoon stage there, first couple years.
Sure.
Where you don't have as much of that. But there are always those people. And I've got stories, and you've got stories, and the people that are listening have stories. But that in itself is not a reason to leave, because you're just going to inherit a new set of problems. And that's...
start all over again.
You know what I'm saying? Money is not a reason to leave.
No.
Not always. Now, I want to be clear about that. I'm not... Obviously, there are some churches that are simply not going to pay you maybe what you need. Fine. I mean, I get that there are exceptions to what I'm about to say, and I did write about this in the book. But the fact of the matter is you're never going to make a killing in youth ministry.
Oh yeah, no.
It's just not going to happen. And so part of that, if you're wanting to do this long term, you can't go from church to church just because the next church is offering you $2,000 more or $5,000 more. Because you are going to hit, and you and I both know this now, you are going to hit somewhat of a ceiling, on how much you get paid. But here's the thing, man, it's like that anywhere, any job.
Yeah, it's anywhere.
You start off, ask teachers, man. Teachers, good night, son. They work their butts off. And Can I say butts on the podcast?
Well, you just did. We've said a lot of things that we are not sure.
Not sure about?
Just this episode. The first episode in, we've already said more words that we're not sure about.
Yeah. There's more to come.
Than the 49 before it.
My wife's not sitting here to help me know what not to say. So,
hey,
and I love her.
Let me tell you a secret.
Wendy's the best.
Here's a secret. This is our show.
Yeah.
So we can do what we want.
Okay, that's beautiful.
If they don't want it, they won't listen to it.
The biggest, just for those listening, the biggest challenge I'm having trying to learn how to do this podcast is how to take drinks without it picking up on the mic.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want me to do this. Yeah, that was my ice.
Yeah.
Riley. He freaks out about that kind of stuff. He's oversensitive about the whole sound issue.
That's because I'm the one that has to edit the show.
If you've been listening for a while, if you're a long-time listener, you guys have no idea how hard Jody has worked. And I'm here to loosen him up a little bit.
Hey, man, we're here for the listener.
Yeah, okay.
Just good.
I just don't think a little ice shuffling is going to bug him. I'm just throwing it out. Is that loud?
Somewhere somebody's wearing earbuds. That's like, stop with the ice. Enough.
Worse than my laugh, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, I mean, so I think, for me, and I've said this before, and I've even said it just a few minutes ago, I think the bottom line for me is that leaving should never be your first option.
Yeah.
It should be a reluctancy there. And, like even when we walked away and left where we were to come to where we have been now for the last 8 years, leaving was excruciatingly difficult.
Yes.
And we were certain of God's call in moving our life. Like it's one of probably 4 times in my whole life that I knew in the moment, this is exactly what God's telling us to do. But leaving was excruciating.
Yeah.
And we were not in a super unhealthy situation, but it was by no means an ideal situation. But coming here was really easy.
Yeah.
It was really easy.
Yeah.
And, we just continue to see God affirm that.
Yeah.
Even in the midst of like really crappy situations.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, Jody, here's the thing, man. Like, I'm a you're rattling your drink.
Well, I had to now. I can't be showing up by you.
Okay. At the end of the day, here for me, with this whole process we're talking about longevity and everything, you got to go all the way back to what started this life for me. And for me, I'm a product of youth ministry.
Right.
Literally a kid that was unchurched. Into my junior year of high school, a youth pastor invites me to church. And out of that, having, going up to Centrifuge, trusting Christ, at youth camp, having never been to youth camp before, didn't know even what that was like. But for me, in that moment of trusting Jesus and Him literally changing my life in so many ways, but also a calling came about. And I wanted to do what my youth pastor did. I wanted to impact teenagers for Christ. And that's still at the foundation. Everything we're talking about, I think this is true for you as well. We want to impact teenagers for Christ. That's what we're called to do. What you and I both believe, and I think what the reason we're partnering on this thing and we're doing this together, is that we believe you can do that better if you experience longevity.
Yeah.
I feel like
Agreed.
Listen, I wish I had the energy and the looks and all that I had when I was in my 20s. I don't, obviously. But the crazy part is I think I'm a much better youth pastor now than I was in my 20s. And it's not to say that a 20-something-year-old listening is not doing great. They are. And I think I did what God was calling me to do them. But in anything in life, you get better as you go. I hope I'm a better husband now than I was in my 20s. I hope I'm a better dad to my 17-year-old son and my 14-year-old daughter than I was, when I was changing diapers. I hope we all grow.
Yeah. But
the same thing is true in youth ministry. So ultimately, if my ultimate deal is, I just want to impact teenagers for Jesus. Great. That's good. But part of that for me is, I want to do it long term because I believe that the longer, and not only at a church, if I can stay there for a really long time, the depth that those relationships can grow into. If I'm there for more than 2 years, if I'm there for 5, or 7 or 8. Then I'm dealing with siblings and brothers and sisters and families, and I've walked through crises with families before, and I've walked through celebrations with families before, and man, that to me is where the heartbeat comes from for me, man. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, I had a really cool conversation this past weekend, actually. We had taken our college students up to a conference up in North Carolina, and
so you do youth ministry, like you have college kids in your youth group, right? Like not in your youth group, but you also are in charge of college, correct? Yeah.
So it's separate ministry to church, but I oversee it as well. And so I had taken them up for a conference there, and so Saturday night after the conference was over, we get back to the hotel we're in, and I don't even know how it came up in the van ride on the way back to the hotel. One of the students who's been around since I got here, we were actually in the town of the church that I had pastored in before I came. So they wanted to go see the church that we were at and all that stuff. So we driving past, and one of the girls asks what it was like leaving to come, because we'd been there for a really long time. And in that particular ministry, I oversaw, I was like family kind of role. So I oversaw children's ministry and all of youth ministry. So literally every student in our ministry or kid in our ministry, we had seen pretty much come to faith in our ministry or in some way, shape, form, or fashion. We were super invested in that. And then we walked into a place of really a lot of inconsistency. I was like the 5th youth pastor for the senior class, counting 2 interims in that 5. And so just kind of talking through them, like that whole process and what was going on behind the scenes. And some of these guys were in the ministry and already. Some of them were just coming into the ministry. Some of them were really young in middle school, kind of all across that. And so what's cool is if you've listened to episode 31, you can hear on episode 31, Kevin, who is on the show. He's one of my students, and he was there when I came, and he talks about just kind of the product of what came about with all of his youth pastors leaving, and then what the transition was like for me coming in. And so he's sharing a little there in the hotel room, and it was just a really cool reminder of the stability that exists now in this ministry, in the health of the ministry, and not even really because I'm doing it all right, or that we've gotten it right along the way, or because I'm like some amazing youth pastor, just because I've stayed, it was just really affirming again, and just it was so encouraging. And then to hear them say, "We're really glad you stayed," and I mean, that's gold. I just want to, can you say that again? I wasn't ready to record that just yet. Can you just as heartfelt as the first time, but I need you to do it one more time so I can get that on the recording. It was really, really good. And those types of relationships, those things that happen and come about as a result of staying put, man, there's no other way to get to that. I mean, It literally only comes through staying where you are. And it wasn't easy, and it would have been easier to leave. And to be honest, I've had plenty of opportunities to do so. But I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm committed to where I am. So that's episode 31. I'll link to that as well. But that's a really good, here's what I'll say, and as far as episodes around longevity, because there's a few that if you haven't listened to, I would say listen to. 31 for sure with Kevin. You can hear kind of what comes about as, from the student side, these guys coming in and coming out over and over and over again. 36 is obviously the episode with Chris. Very, very, very practical. And the episode. Gosh, what's the episode with Mike? We were just talking about this episode.
Was it further along?
It was when you want to choose. Oh, it's right there. It's 42.
42. Yep.
42. So 31, 36, and 42 are great. Episode 42 is Mike, and Mike is a listener to the show and came on. He was going to leave. He could have left his position, had every reason to. It was a great situation. Would have been easy to, no one would have questioned it on either side of leaving. But he decided to stay. And so he comes on in episode 42 and shares about the fruit that he's seen just from staying.
Yeah.
When he
totally.
didn't need to and didn't have to. And so I would for sure check out 31, 36, and 42. We'll link to all those in the show notes. But there's just, I mean, that's why we're doing this.
Totally.
I mean, we talked about at the beginning, like, why do we do this? This is why we're doing this. Because, like you said, we believe that it's worth staying. And that God does more through staying than he could. And again, it's not that you're not going to leave or that God's not going to call you away. He does. But man, if I could just make youth pastors understand what's on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I could just get youth pastors to see what's coming. And again, it's better. Oh man, it's amazing. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's always easy either. Like, I don't want to sell this longevity thing as, oh, well, if you stay for a certain amount of time, you won't ever have battles or frustrations.
That's crazy, man. We both have all kinds of.
And probably about every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Something's going to come up. And that's kind of, I mean, even now, you mentioned this earlier, even now, right now, I'm in the middle of trying to wrestle through,
Sure.
Through some things that we're facing and dealing with. And in the grand scheme of things, probably not that big of a deal, but in the moment, boy, they feel like they are,
Yeah.
But longevity gives
Helps.
you perspective.
It does. Yeah.
This is the kind of situation that is, if 2 years in, would make somebody want to leave.
Yeah.
But it's not worth leaving over.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's just a conversation.
Yeah, and I would just say, now that I have this, now that you've let me, be a part of this, podcast with you here, Jody, I just would love to take a moment just to say, to the folks that do listen, that have listened, or that are coming on board for the first time, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. I've had, lots of conversations with lots of different youth pastors over the years, and I know that literally right now there are all kinds of different folks listening. They're part-time, they're volunteer, they're full-time, making all kinds of different levels of money, all kinds of different levels of vacation. There's probably guys, there's probably girls listening. Big youth groups, little youth groups. The ultimate thing that all ties us together, number one, is our love for Jesus, and then number two, the fact that we want teenagers to love Jesus. But here's what I'll say from just having been in a lot of breakout type sessions, hanging out with youth pastors that have gone through all kinds of different struggles and have, all kinds of different celebration type moments as well. I appreciate what you're doing. And we are, walking the same path, but thank you for serving wherever you're sitting right now, whatever it is you might be going through or whatever joy you're going through. Thank you for loving teenagers and staying committed to your calling. And I just want to encourage you to keep pressing on. And if we can be a little part of that along the way by bringing on some fun folks that can help us be better at what we do, that's what we want to do. And if Jody and I can be a part of that, if I can be a part of that, that's what we want to do. And keep trying to fulfill this calling, because I believe it's a calling that God's called us to help teenagers love Jesus, because being a teenager is not as easy, and it is changing, right? I mean, if you're listening, you know this. I know we always used to laugh at our parents saying it's not like it used to be, but the fact is it continues to get harder and harder, I think, to be a teenager, and we just want to do it well. And so, thank you for serving teenagers, and press on.
Yeah,
stay the course,
and stay tuned for magic tricks.
Yeah. That was a pretty good moment I just had, Jody. Is that what you're going to do on every podcast in my sweet moments like that?
It was a great moment, and I'm trying to...
unbelievable. Yeah,
somewhere there's like people crying, and I
don't think that's happening, but no, we love what we get to do, and we love being a part of this. So it's
absolutely,
good. Fun
and
times.
we are grateful. Stay the course, stay at it. How are we going to do the giveaway?
You tell me. You're the podcast expert. I literally
so how about this?
just bought my first microphone.
Go to the show notes page, which will be at thelongerhaul.com/episode 050.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go to the show notes.
You don't even have to post anything like anything. Just say, I'd love a free book. I would love a free book. Just comment, and we'll throw them all in a hat and pull a couple names out.
I like it. So thelongerhaul.com/episode 050, and you can leave a comment there, and we'll do a drawing there.
Number 50.
We'll do the drawing. We'll do the drawing on Facebook.
Like a Facebook Live kind of thing?
Yeah, so they don't think we're cheating. Yeah, you can.
I know you can do that. I'm just joking.
Gosh, come on, man. So make sure you like the Facebook page, The Longer Haul, over on the Facebook, and we'll do it there, and we'll let the winner know.
Great, sounds good.
Cool. Well, all right. Well, this has been fun,
dude. Thanks for having me, man, and thanks for listening.
No, I'm not having you anymore. You're here. You're part
I know
of it.
Thanks for letting me be here.
I don't have to let you. This is your thing.
Does that mean I can fire you?
I don't know. Probably. So anyway, well, all right. Well, hopefully this is helpful. Stay tuned. We've got some fantastic guests coming up. Right? We're excited about these guys.
This is the coolest part of this gig.
Yeah. So we got awesome guests coming up. We've got some great topics to tackle. If you're not on the mailing list, head over to thelongerhaul.com. Make sure to jump on the mailing list. We do have stuff that comes out there that you get on the mailing list that doesn't come up on the blog. It doesn't come out on the podcast. Some unique content there. Make sure you connect with us over on the Facebook at The Longer Haul there. And, of course, go comment for the giveaway. Any last comment? Oh, we didn't do a resource. Resource? Do you have a resource other than your book that we've plugged a bunch?
I mean, off the top of my head, what am I currently reading? That would be the question. Oh, hopefully we're going to do a podcast on this, but I'll tell you the book I just read, great resource, The 12 Ways Your Phone's Changing You.
Yeah, that's a great book.
So good.
So we'll put a link for The 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You.
Yeah, man.
It's
not even written to teenagers, but you can totally grab some stuff out of that thing.
If you can make it's pretty convicting, though.
It is. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. That's like in a good way, though.
In a good way.
Tons of good stuff in there. And a foreword by John Piper, so you'll automatically sound like you're like smart because you're reading John Piper stuff, which sounds cool.
Unless you're an Armenian, and then you'll sound like a heathen.
Yeah. I don't care about it.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Well, that'll wrap it up for this episode. And for all that, if you have questions or comments, reach out to us. Make sure you jump on the mailing list, like the Facebook page. We will we'll draw names for that giveaway here from folks who comment. We'll say you want to do the end of the month.
Sure.
Yeah. So the end of the month, we'll do that and post that so that you can grab those there. And so, this was fun.
Awesome, man.
First of many.
This is fun.
All right. We'll catch you in the next episode.
Whoop, whoop.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast at www.thelongerhaul.com.